Where I live in the world, we are entering the beautiful season of autumn. As beautiful as it is, I have to reckon that autumn is my season of loss. Today, I will share with you some of my loss stories and why autumn is also so symbolic of grief. I'm Jo McRogers, and this is Grief Support That Works. Welcome. I'm glad you found us today. The goal here is to do grief differently. Where I live in the world, September is when fall starts. My sisters and I have always called the first weekend in September as the worst weekend of the year. This was the weekend of my father's death. It was a late night phone call to come back to my hometown and to go straight to the hospital. But before I could even get out the door, the phone rang again, and the message was to come straight home. On some level, I knew what this meant, but my mind wasn't letting me go there to just go straight home. 3 days later, I left my father's funeral at the age of 21, full of rage and anger and darkness. 1 month later, as a family, when we were trying to choke down our Thanksgiving dinner as though there wasn't someone really important missing, a bunch of neighborhood events occurred, and I, quite frankly, left the table and lost it. My behavior led to one of my not a proud moment. My actions, my words, and my behaviors created another fall moment of remorse related to grief that I still hold myself so accountable for. Several other losses in my life have September and October dates. And fall also happens to be the host of a violent trauma that I lived through that always shows up in my September memories. So when the markers of fall start to show up, even 40 and 30 and 2 years later, it still feels like the worst weekend of the year. Grief roots run deep. With time and work, I can say now that, of course, I'm not completely miserable this time of year. But I have to, every fall, acknowledge that this recent trip around the sun, again, reminds me of trauma and death and time that I lost for living and loving. So autumn is my personal grief landmark. In general, seasonal changes mark a passing of time. It is a bit of a reality test for us grievers. How can I be so out of step with the calendar or with nature? Or how can I be so out of step with time? How has so much time passed that it is a new season? However, as a season itself, autumn holds its own powerful spells about it. The evenings start earlier, and it makes for really long nights. This is more time for sadness, isolation, and anxiety to find us. The days start later. It's darker in the morning for longer. It makes for challenging, dark, awakening mornings and moments. Research about our mood, weather, and the environment have revealed that the time between sunrise and sunset has a significant impact on how we act, think, and live. Autumn's extended darkness is a strong invitation to grief. In the fall, the warmth disappears, the gardens fade and die, leaves burst here into beautiful colors, and then they drop and die. Cycles come to an end. The long, cold season of winter is ahead here in Canada. As grievers, we turn inwards, we isolate, and we prepare for a struggle in autumn. Autumn holds so much symbolism. So much about fall symbolizes the letting go. It symbolizes endings, death, and cycles. You may feel annually as though you have taken steps backwards and are again in the early stages of your grief without even realizing why. Fall can be a bit of a trap. Seasonal changes in general remind us of how little control we have, just like grief. Autumn is a reminder to all of those mourning that life is transient and that death is undeniable and inevitable. Sometimes the truth sucks. And yet I completely acknowledge that fall has its moments of beauty. I was married in the fall. 2 of my children were born in the fall. It has actually always been my favorite season. September always feels like the exciting start of a new year. But it's difficult to celebrate that when fall's markers have become intimately tied to some of my deep grief blueprints. Can any of you relate or reckon where fall is a trigger for you around your grief? If so, please leave a comment below so that we can all learn to support each other and normalize the beauty and the beast of fall. So what to do with these dichotomies that I experience about fall? Well, we can start with acceptance and acknowledgement, the duality, being present with both the grief and the beauty at different times, leaning into one and leaning into the other. This is what grief demands of us, holding polarities with equal assigned value. Self-compassion is key. Acknowledging that this will be a challenging time and making space for that in your schedule, in your head, and in your heart. It's important to experiment and find your rituals, find moments of honoring, find how to support yourself through these triggers with movement, with music, with journaling, with breath work. Personally, I will be lighting a lot of candles throughout this season. I will be awaiting the sunny cleanliness of the winter snow, and I will welcome in the spring energy when it arrives. As you start your way through grief in the fall, as you experience the triggers of autumn and the passage of time, I send to you kind thoughts, kind words, and a kind heart. Thank you, and take good care.